the fence expert. Who's that guy in that orange shirt? Who must be the fence expert? It's almost time to talk about the fences. It's time to discuss operations and expenses. It's time, it's really time to elevate small businesses. It's time to put Joe and drop his knowledge is relentless. This rhyme of mine is getting a bit ridiculous. So here we go, we're live with Joe. Enjoy the show.
What is up, Fence fam? We are back live once again to have a great interview that I think you guys will get a ton of value out of. If you've been watching lately, you know the last few interviews have been recorded live, which is a version of. But for this, it really made sense to do this interview live and in person. So since this is live, if you guys are watching and have questions, drop them in the chat below. We'd love to incorporate your questions into the discussion we're getting ready to have. If you guys are listening to this on the podcast, you're listening to a recorded version of a live conversation that I hold most every Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. Central, and they go for about an hour. If you have questions and you like to drop them in the chat, this will become a recorded interview later on. Check us out at YouTube. You can always drop the comments in there, and they'll get to us. Or you could participate in the live interview at most any given Saturday, again, starting at 10 a.m. Central. If you like the podcast, if you find value in it, it's always helpful if you leave a review. I always get a kick out of reading those. I'd like to see yours in there as well. Guys, before we dive deep into this subject, I first want to shout out our sponsors, Expert Professional Wood Care Products. Love them so much. Caleb, Ashley, and the whole team take great care of us. I think they would take great care of you. Now, they're not just a sponsor, they're a vendor of ours. Actually, they're a sponsor because we were a customer for a lot of years. Love their products. We've tried a lot of other products in the market and kept coming back to Expert. Just the peace of mind of knowing that it's the stain that doesn't stink makes me feel good about putting our guys in contact with it and our customers' kids, and their pets. Anyway, if you guys are looking for stain, check out Expert Professional Wood Care products. Like I said, Caleb, Ashley, and the whole team will take great care of you just in the same way they take great care of me. Guys, thank you so much to the Expert Professional Wood Care products team. With all that being said, if you read the title of the interview, you know exactly who today's guest is. He's been on the show several times. He's a returning guest because we always have such a great conversation. And there's golden nuggets aplenty. You can carry them out of here with a wheelbarrow. And just the teaser of a conversation I've had already behind the scenes before this went live tells me it's going to be much of the same. Without further ado, let's bring him up. The one, the only, Michael Reed. Michael, how are you?
Morning. I'm great. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing so well. First and foremost, I got to say thank you.
Oh, I have to say thank you.
Well, you're making time available on a Saturday morning. I know this is a tough time segment to block off for this conversation, so I appreciate you making time.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I love the show. Usually, I'm doing chores, and I have you guys in my ear, but I'm very happy to be here. Hopefully, we're on somebody's ear, and we'll get some good questions and some good feedback from folks this morning.
Absolutely. So the conversation revolves around, actually, so several weeks ago, we were talking to Robert Whitaker, and he mentioned something. We were talking about Fence Tech because it's right around the corner. It's the topic that's on everyone's tongue right now. But he was talking about that leadership course on Monday, which, if you guys are watching at home, if you're planning on being at Fence Tech, make sure you're there for the leadership course on Monday. Now, you have to pre-register for that. Michael, as I understand, the seats they're limited. They're numbered, right? So we've got to if you're wanting to go to this, you've got to get pre-registered ahead of time when you're registering for Fence Tech. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a pre-conference workshop. And so consider it a deep dive into leadership practices. And when we've done this in the past, people walk away with 100 new ideas, inspired to no end. And what it does is it starts to create that network a little bit sooner in the week than the folks that show up just for the trade show portion of the event. So it's outstanding. We have great people teaching that, and like I said, it'll tie directly into our conversation that we're having today.
Yeah, and that's where, so Robert actually mentioned you by name when talking about leadership and the leadership course as a whole, but he mentioned you a couple times in terms of just overall leadership. So I thought this would be a great subject to talk about today is really about leadership and how it affects the industry. I know it affects my business. It's a conversation that we're having a lot here. Just how do we build leaders that are comfortable leading, but also have the tools to lead? Because not everyone is comfortable or has the tools to be a successful and effective leader.
I think that holds some people back. Some people have great leadership potential, and so I've been teaching leadership for almost 20 years. And I've been doing it in situations like this one, in the association situation. And it really developed a philosophy for me that the association, AFA, is a leadership lab. It allows you to practice some things and to be exposed to some things that you don't impact your business if you mess something up. Your peers pick you up, pat you on the butt, and you keep going. And so that's the wonderful thing about AFA, is that it really is a leadership lab. And early in my career, I came across a model by two guys, a leadership model, two guys, Kouzes and Posner, who wrote a book called The Leadership Challenge. And we often talk about either people having or not having the potential to be a leader. And this philosophy erases that, because what it says is there's 5 leadership behaviors. And if you learn those 5 leadership behaviors and develop those leadership behaviors, then the people around you will perceive you to be a leader. And so if you do things like challenge the process, so if you take bad things and turn them good, or if you take good things and make them better, that's challenging the process. if you inspire a shared vision, if one of the things we talk about all the time is alignment, this idea of alignment between AFA chapters and the national organization, or alignment between the crews in our businesses and the goals of the organization, the company that they're working for. We've talked about manufacturing output, the goals of those manufacturing output aligned with the culture of the organization. So if we talk about inspiring that shared vision, that's another behavior that you can learn and practice. Enabling others to act, modeling the way, and encouraging other people. Those are all things that you do every day. And if you want to be a good leader, learn those behaviors and practice those behaviors.
I love that a lot. And you know what's funny? So I attended mid-year meeting for the first time this year. All of these were rolled into that mid-year meeting, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny hearing these, and a few of them were called out, right? Like, hey, specifically, here's what we're going to bring the chapters into alignment with the national. It's not that they were out of alignment, but let's get them a little bit tighter. Let's get that alignment a little bit closer. And so now as we're going through these, I'm thinking about what went on at mid-year. I was like, oh, yeah, so, they ticked all these boxes.
So here's the funny thing about, and this is, and we're going to drop a lot of names during this conversation, but Tony Thornton, who I worked with as a consultant at AFA before I took this job after Tony retired, he told me when I came on, and I always remember this conversation. One of the things you got to realize, Michael, is that everybody in the industry can do your job better than you, and that's true. So everybody in the industry thinks that they can do this, but I love hearing that when we take these frameworks and we place them over an event like mid-year meeting, that it becomes obvious. So the funny thing is there's no secret sauce here. That's why the lessons that you learn as being an AFA volunteer carry over directly to your experience in your company. And that's why people will volunteer. That's why people will get engaged. That's why people find value in the experience. It's because the lessons that they learn and the relationships that they build carry over directly into the success of their businesses. And so it's music to my ears when you say, okay, I attended the mid-year meeting and now I clearly see where we're challenging, where we're inspiring, where we're modeling, where we're encouraging, and where we're, it makes me feel great, because the secret of the secret sauce is that it's not that big of a secret.
Well, and you know what's funny is we talk about this a lot in our industry. Like when we're in the conversation, we're talking about our industry's progression. Where in my granddad's time, it was a collaborative to an extent. If somebody needed something and I had it, I would lend it to them, and vice versa. And then for whatever reason, in my dad's era, it was very closed. It was very close to the chest. I've got my secrets, you've got your secrets, but we dare not share them with each other. And now what I've said a lot is now it feels like in my era, in our era, it is, well, wait a minute, let's compare notes here. My secrets are a lot like your secrets, and sometimes they're exactly the same, or maybe they're just a little bit different. But what we did for an entire era there is everyone reinvented their own wheel. Right now, they were all wheels. They all worked, or else they wouldn't have stuck around. But rather than work together, collaborate, and build forward, we are all kind of stuck in this process of each trying to create the same process over and over. As an industry, we might have lost a little bit of ground there as far as innovation goes and that sort of thing. But to your point, the secrets are always somewhat similar. They're usually versions of each other.
Yeah, the secret sauce for McDonald's is mustard, is ketchup and mustard and horseradish, and pickle juice, and so you just mix it up in their certain way. So it's not a surprise, it's not a secret. It's just I'll give a lot of credit to you all in the podcast community. One of the things that changed dramatically in recent years is the sharing of information, and so while FinStech, for example, FinStech is a platform for sharing information through education, through the exhibit hall, through conversations in the hallway, through the boardroom. Everything that happens is about sharing information, and that's one platform, but this is another platform. I love the bumper. I think I've told you this before. The bumper music and the lyrics that go into your bumper music are fantastic because it's about sharing about operations and sharing the challenges that you have. And one of the things that I kind of want to put a point to and an exclamation point on this conversation is that leading is hard. Leadership is hard. And I think we toss around this idea of, oh, I'm going to be a leader, or I've got to lead this organization, but we don't actually put a definition around it. And when you overlay a model like these 5 behaviors that are outlined in the Leadership Challenge, it helps everybody share a language about what leadership is or what leaders are. And then everybody can do it because everybody can learn how to challenge, how to inspire, how to model. And that's, like I said, to put the exclamation point on it, that's what's one of the things that's so wonderful about FinStech is because it all kind of comes together in that collaboration of advancing the industry. And that's what leaders do. They come together, and in this specific case, we make FinStech as an opportunity for you all as industry leaders to grow your businesses and get inspired. And that's the goal behind FinStech.
Absolutely. And, I want to call something out is leadership is a process, right? Like it's not a destination, is because I think a lot of people when they're having this conversation, they're like, hey, I'm going to build leaders in my business. And they speak of it almost as if, like, as long as you check these 5 boxes, you get like a leadership certificate. Well, now you're a leader. Congratulations. Like, well, no, it's not really a destination. It's the journey, right? It's a process of you do need to have the skills to take that journey, but it's an always improving, it's an always improving situation, I guess.
It is, and there's a lot of vulnerability that goes into it. It's, and I'm sure you've learned as you've taken over the leadership roles in your own business that, hey, it's now me now they're talking about me that's making that decision. Yeah. And I think that that's why, just to kind of reemphasize the point of why people get involved in AFA, is because it's a shared experience and you can talk to other people who have the same challenges that you do and get experience from people who maybe a little bit more senior than you in experience and can lend you their perspective and help you on your journey. If somebody asked me in a presentation to kind of summarize the AFA experience, and I did it this way, I said, imagine that we're on this journey, and there are going to be times when I fall off the path and you're going to lift me back on the path. And there are going to be times where you fall off the path and I'm going to build you up and bring you back on the path. But we're going to move down this path together. And what makes this unique for AFA is that we're all in the same business. We're all trying to reach that same, broad, that a job that is purposeful and meaningful, positive impacts we can create on the industry to make things better. And AFA becomes that pathway to that future where we're helping one another and we're accepting when people fall off and we bring them back on. And that's what AFA is. AFA is that glue that keeps us all on the path moving forward to success. And in this case, one of the metrics we use for success is the success of our businesses, the growth of our businesses. And that's ultimately what drives people to be involved and stay involved.
Absolutely. Well, and when we're talking about AFA in general, in the mid-year meeting, we kind of talked about what AFA is. And one of the things is where we belong, right? Like It's our industry association, but also one of them is where we grow. Yep. Right. So, and both of those are encompassed in what you just said. It's where we walk the path together. We're not walking this path alone. In my example, that was kind of our dad's era. We each walked our own path, thinking it was the unique path, which, if we're picturing walking through the woods, actually what we found out is your path is just right over there. Now, I don't see it because we put trees in the way. We put blinders on. Yeah. We think it's so unique. But what we're finding out now is, wait a minute, your path looks like your path, and both of your paths are pretty similar to my path. Now, you might be further ahead on the path, or maybe I found somebody that's a little bit further behind, and we can all collaboratively grow together by saying, hey, here's what I've learned so far. Oh, also on this path, you're going to see this, this, and this. Now, here's how I screwed up. Let me be vulnerable and tell you how I did it wrong so that you might avoid those pitfalls and you can progress further down your path. But to put a point on that is it's where we grow, right? By volunteering together. And now in volunteering also, let's break it down into what we're talking about as volunteers. It can be at the chapter level, right? So like I'm a member of the Midwest chapter, the best chapter arguably, well, it's not even an argument. It's just the best chapter of the United States, of the overall American Fence Association. But there's other chapters. I mean, if you weren't blessed to be born in the Midwest or find your business in the Midwest, there's other chapters for you. I say that very tongue-in-cheek. There's a lot of great chapters out there.
There are. I'm sure that the California chapter would argue with you. I'm sure that the Texas chapter would argue with you. I'm sure the Florida chapter would argue with you. But yes, being a chapter leader, point well taken, that being a chapter leader is a place where you're growing and you're leading.
And I think, and you've got a better view of kind of overall, but it seems to me like usually that's probably where the volunteering starts, is at the chapter level. And then it kind of typically grows maybe into the national level, or is that not accurate?
There's so many pathways. I think what happens with AFA, and this is not just AFA, I think this is that you find different ways to connect into the organization. So a lot of times people will connect to the organization and they never had a chapter experience. Maybe there was no chapter experience close to them, or maybe the chapter experience at that point in time was a chapter that was struggling. And so, because everything's cyclical in our business, you can be on top. Yeah. I was just going to say, be careful about when you're on top, Midwest chapter, because don't step on people going up the ladder, because sure enough, you'll see them again when you're coming down.
Yeah, you find yourself on the other side of that.
That's right. So I think when we think about how people connect to AFA, there's lots of ways to connect. You can connect to a special interest group. You can connect through committee work. The point is, and this is why it's so important to attend events like FinTech, is that you need to remember there's one AFA and there's thousands and thousands of people participating through their companies and the organization. So that's why the booth experience is so important at FinTech, because then you can look around and go, man, I'm a Hispanic fence professional, or I'm interested in the chapter experience, or I am interested in this new program that we're doing. And you've got to talk to us, got to talk to people, because reading's only going to get you so far. I want to understand what challenges you're seeing in your business, and who I might know in my network that I can connect you to, because then I can put you on the superhighway.
Absolutely.
AFA, that path that we're going on and falling off and bringing back on, that's a superhighway, and that's what AFA is. AFA is just a superhighway to success. The other two options, or the other two parts of our story to the being a member and being involved, is where you belong, like you said, where you grow, where you lead is kind of what we're talking about, and then ultimately where you succeed. And that superhighway to success is how we're articulating that AFA experience. That's the hope.
Absolutely.
Is that once you're here and once you get engaged, your network propels you, and our programs and services, including education, propel you to greater success.
Well, and to your point earlier too, is where we pick each other up too. So it's a safer place to experiment with leadership, right? And to your first point, to challenge the process, right? To say, hey, okay, I'm going to challenge it in a way that has got some bumpers on it. You know, if we go straight into our business, start challenging everything, we might find ourselves in a dire circumstance. But it gives us kind of a segue into, okay, maybe here's how we challenge, right? And maybe a soft way of challenging versus going in and breaking everything. But Michael, can we relate that to FinTech? Maybe in like how FinTech might help us to challenge processes, or how we might find a way to challenge processes through FinTech?
So I would think that there's this. Well, not I think. I know in talking to people that there are challenges and concerns in your business, and I imagine that a lot of people come to FinTech to try to figure out a solution to those challenges. And I think that one of the conversations that I'm hearing a lot of people talk about is coming to FinTech with intention. So coming to it with a list, a written list of things that you want to get done. And I think that if you look at carefully at that list, there's a lot of challenging in there. So I'll turn the tables on you from an interview perspective and just say, Joe, as you've kind of come up to take responsibility for Ozark Fence, and what are some of the things that FinTech has inspired you to do differently than your dad's business or your grandfather's business?
Well, if nothing else, so one of the things is it opened me up to a network of contacts that I wouldn't have had otherwise, right?
Yep.
But it also gives us a larger perspective on what the industry is doing as a whole, across the nation, right? So this happens, it seems like every year, at least one or two nights, I'll find myself in a small group somewhere off-site, and we'll just be talking about, to your point, here's some challenges I have in my business. Or someone else says, hey, this is a challenge. And I say, well, we do it that same way and we don't see it as a challenge. And maybe we should. Maybe we should try to break the process a little bit. But I think the networking component, if nothing else, is one of the largest benefits I see of going to FinTech. Now, there are a lot of benefits. I don't want to say that's the only one, but just getting around other industry professionals and rethinking maybe how we do our processes here.
Well, knowing a little bit about how your business has changed, I'm gonna ask a leading question.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think networking is important, but it's hard to sometimes monetize that. So I'm going to make an investment to go to FinTech. I'm going to create a network. And that's a hard thing to make. But can you think about how your business in terms of is the way that it makes money and the way that you've started to scale your business? Have you made different decisions to move in a different direction because you've seen opportunities as a result of that experience?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, again, when you're around people that are already succeeding in somewhere and you kind of try to figure out how you apply that to your business. But, we've rolled pretty strongly into e-commerce and both through.
That's where I'm reeling you in. That's where I was going.
Well, but that came from some of these conversations, right? To say, hey, here's some challenges we have, and here's how I've seen others succeed. And I mean, obviously, we're not the first e-commerce brand in the fencing industry by far. There's some guys that have been in that game for a very long time, but through FinTech, I've seen some of them. I've seen how they operate. I thought, well, we could probably do that, but also sat down and had conversations with people that say, hey, here's some. Maybe here's some problems I've had with that, or maybe here's some interactions where, if this could be done better, I would probably be more likely to buy from that person or buy from that company again. But to your point, it put us in a room of people to think about that. But also through walking the show floor, it also puts us in touch with vendors that we might not have had contact with prior, and now we happen to sell, whether it's tools or whether it's hardware, things like that. But yeah, so it puts us in the room with people to kind of make these discoveries and kind of make these growth habits as well.
So that I think is that whole idea of challenging the process. How do we take bad things and make them better? How do we fix stuff? And then how do we take a good thing and how do we make it better? I think those are examples of challenging the process. So if you move on to kind of, go ahead. Were you going to pivot us?
I want to stick on challenge the process for just a minute more, because AFA as a whole has been challenging the process.
Sure.
Right. So we see you guys doing that, or at least I do from my seat, see you guys doing that through, we were talking about e-learning quite a lot. And just how you've brought learning opportunities to, because I've got to think one of the key pieces of feedback I've heard, and I'm sure you've heard it as well, about the fencing university is great, right? The sales training schools, the fence installation schools are great if you can get to them, but sometimes they're not accessible to everyone for whatever reason. So it seems like you guys have said, okay, well, let me meet you where you are. Instead of having you come to me, let me come to you and bring you some educational resources that can help you be better and help you succeed. One of the missions of AFA is where you succeed, right? So I see you challenging it there, but my understanding, I've heard whispers that AFA isn't done challenging process. Can you speak to that just a little bit?
So I, just like you, created a new program and services. What we do is we listen to members and we look at our mission as an organization and this idea of helping our organization, helping our industry grow. When you think about how we might benefit our members and consumers, which is part of our mission, one of the things we started to think about was the customer experience. And how could AFA help its members in the customer experience? And so we looked at other models, we looked at what existed already, and lots of people are familiar with Net Promoter Score. So if you've ever stayed in a hotel and they send you a one-sentence question that says, how likely are you to recommend our services, our product, to a friend or a family member? And what the research says is if people are willing to do that, and how strongly they do that, there's a correlation to how loyal they are to your company. Mm-hmm. And so we had a couple of volunteers who had been doing some work with the Net Promoter Score, and I was familiar with NPS. And so what we've done is we're ready to soft launch at FinTech a product called FinSpulse. And that FinSpulse will be a partner with members, and we'll do the Net Promoter Score calculation, and you'll get a ton of feedback from your customers that will allow you to improve your operations and make your business better. Now, the cool part about us doing this as an industry is that I'll be able to take all of the data on an aggregate and then say, what can we do as an industry to help everybody, and who's really doing an outstanding job? And if you know competition in the local space, your competitor is doing a good thing, you want to achieve that or better. And so the idea is that we start to benchmark that data, that Net Promoter Score data, and we say, these 5 companies have the best Net Promoter Score in the country. And then we start telling the stories about their success. And once that system starts to roll, once that feedback comes back from y'all's customers, and you get that feedback and improve your businesses, and then you're giving out better customer experiences, we're going to see an improvement in the overall perception of fence contractors in the country. And as we built this product, what we realized is that we're not doing it just for contractors, suppliers. Those people who are giving you products also need feedback from y'all on their customer service experience, their product experience.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond a how did we do, right? So a lot of those are typically like, hey, how did we do? And that would be the equivalent of us if I'm sure a lot of contractors like us, we send out review requests on every project. How'd we do? We would love to hear your experience on whatever sites we like to see reviews on. But it sounds like you guys are taking that a step further to say specifically, what did we do well? What can we enhance on? So I recently had a hotel stay and I got one of these, right? Yep. The first question is, how'd we do? Great.
How likely you to recommend this to a friend or family, whatever your number was.
Right. Well, and it goes further. Like, how was your check-in experience? How could we? And there's always usually a box under that. How could we do better? Right. How is your room? How could we do better? How is your housekeeping? How could we do better? Did you use room service? There's all these things to where that hotel chain is getting very granular on, guys, we are a 7 on check-in. How can we get to a 10? Well, based on this feedback, it is whatever the feedback is. But a 7's okay. Like, it's not a failing score, but I think the people that do really well are the ones that figure out how to get it from a 7 to an 8 and from an 8 to a 9 to really get that figured out. And, so one chain that gets I think does this really right is the Four Seasons. Because when you talk about customer service, when you talk about room experience, when you talk about all of that, they're the ones that get it right. And I think they're the ones that probably listen the best to, actually, I know because in their training, I've read about their whole training experience. So they have an internal leadership program, right? And one of the things is being active listeners. So not just like, where are you coming in from while I'm typing? And hey, what are you guys doing in town while I'm typing? It's listening for key phrases, right? And I'll tell you an experience, and this was 4 or 5 years ago, actually longer now, but we were coming through Dallas. Dallas is notorious for canceling a ton of flights. Ours got canceled, but ours got canceled while we were in the air, which means by the time we landed, all the hotels in the area were absolutely booked. Couldn't find one. Well, a guy that we were traveling with has some connection at Four Seasons, so we end up heading out there. And the gal behind that was checking us in was asking us these questions. How's it going? Where are you coming from? All this. But she's actively listening, right? Well, we had unexpected layover, this and that and the other. So she says, well, let me do this. We've got a great have you guys eaten yet? Like, well, no, we're supposed to be home by now. No problem. We've got a great restaurant over here. I'm actually going to comp X dollars off of your guys' dinner because I want to make sure you don't go to bed hungry, that you don't have to go try to find a restaurant somewhere. We'll take care of it all. Also, do you guys have laundry that needs taken care of? Because you're probably planning on doing laundry tonight. We'd be glad to do laundry service for you. We'd be, all of this stuff, which they've learned, I'm sure, through systems like what you're talking about, through the net promoter scores of people that said, hey, when I'm traveling and it gets canceled, here's something I hate. I don't want to have to go try to find a restaurant, try to Uber eat something into the hotel. Now, all of a sudden, when your flight gets canceled, you don't get your checked luggage back, right? It's going to meet you at home a day later. So now I've got the clothes on my back, or if I'm smart, I've packed a backup pair in a backpack because this has happened before. But all right, so now anyway, the Net Promoter Score has given this hotel chain all of this information, and they've done really well with it. What I think we can do as an industry is what I'm hearing from you is we're going to start, if we ask the right questions, we're going to start getting back answers that we can tailor our business to provide experience similar to that.
That's exactly right. I think, so the conversation, we can't tell, because everybody's business is so different depending on your market and how what customers you serve. Like, everybody's business is slightly different. However, if we can provide a framework, a platform for you all to participate in that then allows you to, at a very high level, benchmark yourself against other people's experience, and then we can start having conversations about customer experience, you get all of that benefit of belonging, which we spent a few minutes talking about at the top of the show. You get all the benefits of belonging along with a platform or a system to improve your customer experience. And let me tell you something, this is the benefit of whether you're talking about the innovations that we've had in e-learning, whether you're talking about the innovations and the creative that our meeting planning team has done to improve FinTech, whether you're talking about the instructor experience and being an instructor at one of our schools, our focus as an organization is on the member experience or the customer experience. And what we're trying to do is provide that same kind of framework or platform for you all to improve as members, to improve your customer experience. And so just by having that conversation about the customer experience, we're going to improve the customer experience across the board.
And by improving the customer experience, we'll improve our business, right? Because we'll become known as the companies in our market that provide exceptional customer service. In my example, listen, Four Seasons is bougie. It is expensive. It is not in my regular travel budget, right? But they do very well, right? So they already have this built-in perception, because my experience is not unique. The reason people that can afford to go to there stay there is because that experience is across the board. They are known for this customer service because they've listened and they've improved. And now, because of that, they can offer a higher level of service at a higher price point, right? Because they've built up this knowledge that, hey, if you can afford it, great place to stay, right? I mean, at the base level, they are a hotel that rents you a room by the night. How are they different than a Holiday Inn Express? Not
Correct.
to throw shade at Holiday Inn Express. I've stayed there. I love them. But very different price points, right? Well, they offer different service. One offers an incredibly higher level of customer service. I don't typically need that on a trip, so I don't typically stay there. But I'm telling you, if I won the lottery, I'd probably check them out more regularly, right? So I think if we build our business that way, we can find ourselves because no one talks about Four Seasons being overpriced. No one says, oh, those guys, they do the same thing as everybody else, just at twice or three times the price. You don't want to stay there because all those people care about is making money. Nobody says that. They lead with the customer service point, right? So if we as a business can offer customer service, no one talks about us being, well, you don't want to deal with such and such fence company. They do the same fence as everybody else, but at twice the price. The conversation will be, if you want it done exactly right, on time, and have a great experience, and you can afford it, you should go with these guys.
Joe, I think you're connecting a sales, kind of a sales philosophy about talking about value rather than price to exactly what I'm talking about with regard to the customer experience. And a lot of times that's difficult. If you are brand new to the business and you are working to get it, this is why it's really important for folks to understand that when we talk about the AFA experience, we're talking about those folks that are brand new to the business, getting their feet off the ground, and we're talking about very experienced, established companies that have been around for generations. And those are both constituents in AFA. And so what we have to do is say, hey, we need to talking about challenging the process and inspiring a shared vision, we need to plant that idea that the customer experience is important early in your business life cycle. We need to do that early and make that important so that you don't have to, you went back and talked about learning difficult lessons and then, learning from others. If you learn early in the process that your customer experience is paramount into building your brand and building your company, and we can help you do that, then we're providing value for your membership. And that's what we're talking about here is at what stages can we help you, whether you're on the supplier side of the industry and you're looking to gain more customers, or you're on the installer side of the industry and you're looking to understand more or to improve your customer experience. And that's the value of being part of the industry trade association.
Absolutely. And one thing I've noticed, and not just in our industry, but as companies in general, the companies that are most successful have kind of had a thought shift to where, for an example, we aren't a fence company that provides customer service. If we want to do it really right, we're a customer service company that happens to install fence, right? When you flip that sentence, all of a sudden your business changes and your priorities get a little bit more straightened out to say, hey, okay, so do I want to make another trip out there to replace, these pickets that arguably are fine? They're cosmetic. I didn't do anything wrong. Do I want to go make that trip out there and swap these out? No. Now, I could stand on the hill and say, you get what you get because in my paperwork, in my contract, right. And I can be right all day long. Now, that customer service experience is junk now because I put the company first. I built fence first before thinking about customer service. If you flip that sentence, it is absolutely. First and foremost, I apologize that those got left. We've got a process where the crew's supposed to walk around that fence and see it. They must have missed it. I'd love to have them out there tomorrow, swap those out for you, and also while they're there, walk around again. Is there anything else while they're there? Is there anything else that jumped out to you that they can take care of while they're there? We're going back out to replace this picket anyway, right? Like the companies that do it well and that care about their reviews go out and replace the picket anyway. So now can we switch that sentence? Can we be a customer service forward company that happens to build fence? Your NPS survey is a way for companies to understand what their customers are asking for, right?
That's
so
true.
for every customer that reaches out to us because they don't really like a few of the boards, how they look, there could be two or three others that just look at it and go, it's fine. It's okay. It was a decent experience. Well, through this survey, if we could get some feedback on that to tell the guys, hey, absolutely not. These pickets have to be in great shape. In this example, now all of a sudden we're improving our customer service without having to be asked back out. It absolutely helps our success in the future.
Well, I was thinking about those two concepts of challenging the process and inspiring the shared vision, and in that customer experience. If you are focused on the customer experience and you build fence, imagine when it's time for you to scale your business, and you're thinking about moving into gate automation, or you're thinking about moving from your residential business into doing commercial work, or taking your business and doing industrial work. If you are already set up from a customer experience standpoint, you're not learning that lesson again. You're just taking what you already know from your outstanding customer experience, and then you're scaling your business. And whether you're moving into an allied or a related business, and now you're going to do hardscapes in addition to fencing, or you're going to do rails in addition to fencing, or you're doing something completely new, like launching an e-commerce site, or taking on selling directly to some folks in your area because you're going to start distributing product. Those leaps are easier because you've already got an outstanding platform for the customer experience.
Absolutely. Well, and especially, it's not just contractors, right? I wish some of our vendors asked us for feedback, because I've got some ideas. And because a lot of times I feel like we're probably like a lot of companies where after a couple times of having a less than stellar experience, if another option comes along, I'll just go with that option. I'm not going to call the first company to give them all this feedback. I'm just going to quietly go away. Well, if they were asking the questions, hey, what can we do better? Well, delivery time is awful, and the chance of everything showing up the first time is less than 50%, right? So this isn't great. I'm going to have to try to find somebody that provides that higher level of service. Well, if they'd caught that sooner, they likely could have fixed that, right? They likely could have changed my experience to where someone else comes through. It's like, well, these guys care because they're asking me. And the second part of that is, and they're actively trying to correct it, right? The data coming in is only as good as the changes that you make in your business to accommodate for the data. But I think our customers will have the same experience, but I think a lot of vendors can also use this to increase their customer service and their customers' experience.
When we went into it, we were definitely thinking that this was a benefit to, this was going to be a benefit. And it wasn't until we started talking to some suppliers and listening that we realized, hey, we need this tool to be flexible enough to whether you're asking the same customer repeatedly, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or family, or a lot of times on the installer side, you're talking about one and done, and you're not going to see that customer again for, unless there's a problem, months or years. And so we needed to accommodate both types of business models, either that repeated customer ongoing, like on the supplier side, or on the installer side, where you're talking about customers that you may only, because you're going to use that data differently. Ultimately, you want people who are going to recommend you and feel so good about your experience that they'll recommend you to your friends or family. The ultimate goal here, whether you're AFA trying to encourage people, to stop just looking at the AFA logo and saying, hey, I should be a part of that, and making the decision to join, or if you're in your business trying to sell more fence product and fence installations, it's all about how likely are you to recommend me to a friend or family, and how good do you feel about that question. And remembering that you can improve this over time. This isn't a one and done deal. If you know your suppliers are listening to you when you're giving them feedback and things are getting better, you're not going to go somewhere else. You're going to be like, man, I've got a good partnership with these folks. So that's the whole kind of underlying premise to Fence Pulse. And in terms of the development of the product from a development standpoint is all done. Now we need to get people using it and stretching it out. So anybody that's created software kind of knows that this is the challenge. Is now you think you've got it built the way it's supposed to be. Now let's put it through its paces, work out the final kinks, and move along. So that's where we are with Fence Pulse. And the soft launch will be at Fence Tech this year. So I've got a course on the customer.
Some more information there.
Yeah. So I've got a course on the customer experience in the conference program, and then come to the booth and we can show you a quick little video and sign you up to participate in the program.
Nice. I love it. I love it. So rolling back to kind of the 5, and I absolutely realize we're already at 50 minutes, so we're probably not going to be able to roll through all these, but the shared and the Inspire shared vision, can we talk about a little bit about, again, like I said, FinTech's right around the corner, so we're trying to apply everything to FinTech. So Fence leaders, what do you think, how do you think that they can take away their experience from FinTech and share that inspired vision with the leadership at home or their teams at home in general?
So one of the things that I love about FinTech is that we see a lot of the same folks. So whether you've been to FinTech repeatedly and it's just part of what you do to invest in your company and invest in yourself to come, or you're brand new. I've heard a lot of folks being new this year, coming first time to the show. I think that it's going back to that concept that we had at the very beginning of the top of the show, which was be intentional. So when you are looking, go to experiences looking to be inspired, and coming kind of in your mind with what my challenges are, and participate in as much as you can. So don't blow off the keynote speaker because you want to sleep in a little bit. Don't blow off the special interest group reception. Those are experiences where you're going to have a conversation with somebody and connect with them, and then you're going to be inspired to do something different in your business. So it always feels good when people say they walked the floor and they talked to a lot of vendors and they had a great experience. And the question is, okay, well, what are you going to do different? What's that shared vision, and how are you going to take that back to the folks back at home? And I think you do that, you inspire that shared vision by it being very clear what problems you're going to solve, where are you going to take your business to new heights, and how are you going to impact your customers, or get that new installation or gate operator installation division off the ground. How are you going to put together a team? So if you know that you're going to do automation and that's in your goal sheet for this year, and you come to AFA, what does that look like? What are my challenges to people who've done it before? Who are my possible vendors who I can partner with and who has a good program to teach me what I need to know? What education can I get? You can get all of that solved, and when you leave at the end of the week, do something different at home.
Right. Absolutely. I want to take a brief second to talk about inspiration. And you mentioned don't skip the keynote speaker. Of all the years that you need to be in a seat at the keynote, this is the year. If you guys watch my interview with Van Morris and Bobby Batchelor, you already know I'm preaching to the choir at this point. If you missed it, go back and watch it. Not right now. When we're done talking, go back and watch it. You will find inspiration. So Bobby put it this way. So Bobby has sat through Van Morris's presentation, or versions of, 4, 5, 6 times. Right. And he said each time he walks out of the door a little bit taller. And guys, after just an hour of just chatting with him and hearing his story, I'm telling you, the doors aren't going to be tall enough walking out of that keynote auditorium, because there's going to be some people find some inspiration to walk a little bit taller out of that place. Now, we've got to take that inspiration home, right? But I love the idea that he's going to leave everybody fired up. And directly after the keynote is the opening ceremonies for the floor. So there's going to be some people on a mission going through that show floor. And anyway, I'm not sure where I was going with it. It's inspiration and keynote. And those two things were like lightning to me. Like, well, we've got to talk about Van Morris, because, guys, the keynote, plan on being in town early enough to see the keynote, early enough to give yourselves time. Leadership program on Monday, the Pickets and Peaks on Tuesday, Van Morris's keynote on Wednesday, show floor obviously Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and this is the year, guys. And I'm not taking anything away from any other years. I mean, listen, Oklahoma City was in the Midwest chapter's backyard. It was a good one. It was a good one. We had a great time. I hate to say it. This one's probably going to be better just because, and I don't want to take anything away from other keynotes or anything else. The way I put it to Bobby was, it seems like every year I leave the keynote thinking like, I don't know how, good luck next year, because this was an out of the park, grand slam. Like, I don't know how you improve on this. Then the interview was set up with Van, so I went to watch his biography on his website. You guys should do that. And I was like, this is how. Before I even talked to him, I was like, well, this is how. This is how. Now, good luck next year. That's just, I don't know.
We're gonna worry.
I don't know.
Worry about next year as we're going through and we're thinking about how to improve it. We're gonna go. But I will tell you, you're right. I think the experience with Van will help people talk. I love the image of help people stand taller. If you think about, again, what are we trying to do with AFA, and what, as the executive director of AFA, what am I trying to accomplish here? What I'm moving us down to that middle. I'm enabling others to act. So if you look at the key aspects of leadership, challenge this process, inspire a shared vision, enable others to act. This doesn't focus on me as the executive director or my team as the staff. What we're trying to do is create an experience so that when those chapter officers put their hands up and say, or they go to the bathroom and get elected, chapter president.
Surely that's
how it really happens. You go to the restroom or you hit the bar and all of a sudden you come back and now you've got a new job.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. We want that experience to be so good that you'll do something else and you'll create impact. If you think about the people who have gotten involved with Scott Galpin, one of our board members, and these service projects, these mission service projects with Purple Heart Homes, their lives are changed, and it had nothing to do with me. It was empowering a situation and greenlighting Scott's passion about doing these service projects with Purple Heart Homes, and the ultimate result is somebody at the chapter level digging a post hole with their competitor from down the road, measuring it, talking about, well, I do it this way, I do it this way. They're having a great experience, and all we did was set the table. And that's FinTech is a large part of us setting the table, so that you all as members have a good experience and are willing to help create positive impact in the industry. So that's what we do here. So good luck next year. I'll accept that challenge, because I'm going to tell you, Indy's going to be off Indy. Every year, there's going to be a group of people that walk away and say, well, good luck next year. That was a great experience. And that warms my heart.
Yeah. I look forward to that, because it's like, I know how high the bar will be set after this keynote wraps up. And so I look forward to like whatever else is out there that does it better. So you talked about enabling others to act by setting the table and arming everyone with the tools that they need, with the information they need, the new vendor connections, maybe through the show floor, that sort of thing. But what you talked about with the Purple Heart Homes that you had nothing to do with, I think that speaks to the next line item, which is modeling the way, right? Yeah. So you have modeled what leadership looks like and what you believe the leadership should look like. And you've enabled those on your team to act without feeling like they're micromanaged or whether they're feeling like they have to come to you. So you modeled it in such a way that they took action and obviously led you to great results. How do you think the AFA, maybe as a whole, or maybe FinTech specifically, models or provides a model for others in leadership?
So let's use a case study that a lot of people are familiar with, and I don't think you'll mind, but you and I both know and are friends with Matt Warner, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so when we talk about someone who inspires this shared vision, this idea of having Monday morning meetings, and this idea of relating to your employees in a way that's different. So challenging the process. Let's relate to our employees that's different. Inspire a shared vision. Let's have these Monday morning meetings where we're understanding who our employees are and what's driving them and their purpose. And and how modeling the way he goes all over the country modeling these Monday morning meetings, inviting people to come to Nebraska to see his Monday morning meetings. If you think about these 5 behaviors, and Matt will be the first one to admit, he's not the perfect leader, but if you think about Matt as a case study in great leadership, challenging the process, let's do something different, inspiring a shared vision, let's value our employees and who they are, modeling the way, and then that piece of encouraging the heart, that's it. If you've ever spent any time with him, go to My Salesman booth, or you go to you have dinner with him, or you have a pull aside conversation of hey, you really inspired me, I'd like to talk to you about that. That guy, you walk away from that guy the same way you walk away, I think, feeling from Van, that encouragement of the heart that gives you the drive then to pick yourself up when you screw something up as the leader. Because let me tell you, when I said leadership was hard at the beginning, it doesn't matter whether you're leading a neuroscience unit, you're a surgeon leading a neuroscience surgical unit, or you're running a fence company, or you're running a pool company, my association that I ran before this one. It doesn't matter. Leadership is difficult, and you need people around you who will encourage you and lift you up when you screw it all up. And it'll happen. And that's why, again, you're going to fall off the path. I'm going to pull you back on.
Sure.
I'm going to fall off the path, and you're going to pull me back on. And that's why this works.
Well, and using Matt as the example, when you do all this, you inspire others to lead also, but you also, my phone can ring right after this interview, and Matt could say, hey, I've got this crazy idea. My answer is, I'm in. Well, do you want to hear about it? Sure. But
sure, whatever.
Yeah, we can get there if you want to, but just know, check my name off. Like, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. Let's go. Because he's done all these things, right? Because I know he knows how to challenge a system without completely breaking it unless it needs broken, right? And he's inspired me. I see what he does with his team, whether we're talking about ESS, whether we're talking about My Salesman or Empire, whatever. He inspires or he enables others to lead, right? So if he has a task for me, he's going to enable me to lead. He's going to inspire me and let me go. He models the way, to your point, is he's shown us over time that here's exactly how you should do it, and here's exactly how I would do it. You should put your own spin on it. But you're absolutely right that the final one, encouraging the heart, is what he is very good at. So yeah. He's going to hate this, by the way, us talking so good about him. But his best quality is encouraging the heart, right? Like, you can have a 5-minute conversation with him, and he'll change your life if you're at that point in your life. You know what I mean? He is the best at encouraging, and we should all be more like Matt.
So
that's the part he's going to hate the most.
So your question that I responded to was, can you relate it back to FinStech? And yes. Matt is unique. I'm not taking any away from it. Matt is a case study for great leadership. But here's the thing: there's other people. There's other Matts. There's other people out there who do that. And so the reason you get involved in FinStech, the reason you come to FinStech, the reason why you don't just attend, where you spend some time talking to people at a reception or getting to know people. Introducing yourself and making yourself vulnerable to people, is because, well, maybe Matt's not your cup of tea. Maybe you need somebody who's more closely aligned with, a manufacturing challenges. So that would be the first one that says, who you need to talk to? You need to be talking to here. And so the great thing about FinStech and the great thing about the fins industry, I always tell people I have the best job in the entire world because I get to work with the best entrepreneurs in the country. And one of the things that we do that's different than other industries is that we connect people and we connect with people with one another. And that's the power of this experience. And it all, if you miss FinStech, if you choose not to participate in FinStech, you miss out on probably the the most exciting opportunity. You can do it at another event, you can do it at the local chapter level, and all of those things are good. But if you miss the FinStech experience, then you miss out on kind of the main event.
Yeah. Well, and we use Matt as an example. Now, Matt is also very comfortable being in the spotlight and talking about it because that's how he encourages others. That's how he shows the way, models the way. But so I'll use another example in Bobby Batchelor. We mentioned him earlier of someone who is not as comfortable, right? Now, he did great on our interview last week, but I think he doesn't mind me saying it's probably not his most comfortable moment, right? But through FinTech, I got to, through Matt actually, I was introduced to Bobby Batchelor. And you want to talk about a leader. I mean, an incredible leader who will inspire you, who will encourage you, who will pick you up off the path if you find yourself off of it. But I would have never, ever met him had I not been at FinTech. Right. And this happens so many times where there's a circle of people and we're all just talking about Fins. And Matt goes, wait a minute. You guys haven't met? Oh, no. Let's stop right now. Let me connect these dots. Absolutely. You've got to know. Also, let me tell you a story. And then after that story, like I felt like me and Bobby were best friends after that. And I know that should I reach out just because of the person he is, Bobby would absolutely help me find my way back onto the path, right? Like he would help me back on the path, but never would have happened. Well, maybe not never. Maybe those dots got connected in some other way through Matt, but I shortcutted that process by being there, being available, and just being in the room, really.
So in full transparency, I appreciate that story, but in full transparency, Bobby Batchelor, that is the brainchild of this Net Promoter Score and how this thing can uplift the entire industry. So
there you go.
So
I
I
honestly had no idea.
he does not need that, and he'll probably be mad that I said it. But
Sure.
I wouldn't want this I wouldn't want this conversation to go by or people get excited about this program without knowing that Bobby was. But I'll tell you, the connection story is I was searching for a way when I first got here on how we improved the membership experience. And so we would go to the nominations committee and we would get these great, I would recommend being on the nominations committee to anyone. It's such a powerful experience. And then we would have these other experiences with a different constituency and it wouldn't be as glowing. And so I was looking for a uniform way to say, okay, when we say, let's just take education, for example. When we take our instructors, what do our instructors think about the experience? What do our students think about the experience? What do the people who are taking tests think about the experience? What do the people who are giving the tests, the proctors, think about that experience? How are our chapters engaging on our education experience? Now, if we want to make education more powerful, more impactful to our members, we need to take into consideration what all those member experiences are and then improve the system. And that's what FinPulse will do for you all out in the field, whether you're a supplier or on the contracting side. It's the idea of how do you measure this experience over time, because this is improving. I thought that we would be able to make grand changes at AFA very quickly. And I thought I had this. Oh, I know AFA. I've been here I've been consulting with this organization for many years. I know it's taken 3 years to turn the battleship, to turn the battle group. It's not something that happens overnight.
Sure. Absolutely. Let's pivot really quickly because the last one's encourage the heart. Let's talk about encourage the heart really quickly, and because one of the talking points on encouraging the heart is you can encourage others by celebrating them, right? By celebrating their achievements, right? Really, we love doing this, and actually, as I said that, I realized as a leader, I have fallen off that particular path yesterday. So each month, the final Friday of every month, we have a big team meeting. We eat lunch. We talk about the month we've had. We talk about the month coming up, that sort of get everyone on the same page. But what we didn't do that we usually do that we should have done is shout outs and celebrations.
That's right.
Absolutely missed that one. So, all right. Anyway, so But that's one way where we try to, where we celebrate others, right? To say, and it could be in, hey, we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 5-star reviews in the last month for this crew. Let's talk about this because they're doing something exceptionally right. Or I see you guys behind the scenes crushing it. You don't get reviews because you're behind your support, but these reviews aren't here if our crews aren't supported. So let's celebrate you in that, in terms of order accuracy or pickup times or whatever metrics we're talking about. Let's talk about really quickly again. Let's connect this back into Fence Tech about celebrating achievements, and Fence Tech kind of shows us how that looks like as well. Is that right?
Well, I think so, without a doubt, because what we're trying to do when we've got all of you together is recognize those folks who have gone above and beyond. So you've got your chapter of the year presentation at the awards ceremony. You're recognizing long-term service. We always have a recognition of kind of the volunteer who's given the most that year and had created impact that year. And so that is our attempt to celebrate your all's involvement in AFA. The great thing about this organization is that there's a lot of that celebrating that goes along. And so if you think about, it's interesting because you automatically went to this place of, man, I forgot to do this. It is hard to remember and to do consistently, encouraging the heart and to create those systems in your business that thanks the people who are behind the scenes, that elevates those folks that aren't always in the spotlight. And that's a challenge, no matter what the organization, whether it's your company, whether it's a giant distributor, or if it's AFA, the challenge is how do we recognize and thank those people? And then the other part of encouraging the heart, and I'm going to use another case study here that you and I both know, is past President Randy Ward. And so when you think about somebody who can encourage the heart, who can take when you're at a very dark point and turn that around, or in Randy's case, where, he said, I think you should put your hat in the ring for this job. And I laughed, said, no, thank you. Guess what? His encouragement of that and his saying, I don't know why you're saying no, but you should do this. If you think about kind of bringing this, we're doing two things in this conversation. We're kind of talking about aspects of leadership, and we're also talking about Fence Tech. But here's the thing. When you think about great leaders, a lot of times they will excel in one particular area. And I think that the industry has well established that Randy Ward, for many people in this industry, is that person who encourages their heart and makes them feel. It's not that he doesn't challenge the process, he does. It's not that he doesn't inspire a shared vision, he does. He's a great model, and he's a great heart encourager.
I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten from Randy that just said, hey, buddy, rolling down the road, I was listening to the podcast. Great job. I loved it when you talked about this, and this. I mean, you're killing it. And I just want to say thank you. It's like, again, talk about leaving the room taller. I was like, oh, man, when Randy called, like, I love hearing from Randy in general, but he has perfected the art of encouragement for sure. And I think that's one thing, to bring it back to AFA. That's one thing AFA does, is it brings all these people together, right? We're talking about Matt. We're talking about Bobby. We're talking about Randy. We're talking about Tony. We're talking about yourself. AFA is kind of the great connector, right? That has brought these people that, like, if not for the AFA, I might not have met. Now Randy's in roughly in my market, so I likely would have ran across Randy. Actually, I did know Randy prior. Anyway, but I likely would have never met Bobby. Just, he's on the other side of the country. I wouldn't have interacted with him had it not been for AFA, Fence Tech, me at Fence Tech, Matt making the introduction, right? So
let me do this just as a way to kind of talk about leadership, talk about Fence Tech, talk about using case studies, because at my heart, I'm a teacher. At my very, very heart, my reason for being here at AFA is because I know that I can use my experience to make this organization better, to become more impactful, to help the industry grow. But I do that through teaching. And so let me try to wrap this up just in doing a couple profiles in leadership.
You got it.
The president that was, and I'll use this just a single office holder, the president who hired me. So the past president at that time was Randy Ward, who was leading the search committee, but the president was Sam Williams at the time. And I think you're talking to Sam next week. Those two guys, they set AFA up on a new course. So you had a very charismatic executive director. You had great acceleration in the industry through Tony in that period of time. And those two guys, Randy and then Sam, recognized that the organization, they had to change the executive director piece because Tony was retiring. But the second thing they did is that Sam especially set up the resources that were necessary he removed barriers for me. He created the opportunity for me to be able to do things that Tony wasn't able to do because the board had said, oh, we're not focused on that, or we're dealing with COVID, or we've got other priorities that we're doing. But if you think about what Sam did in the industry and for the industry as leadership of the president, and his ability to get people behind that shared vision of a bright future, and Sam's commitment to improving the chapter experience was fundamental to this whole thing changing. He knew that if we changed the chapter experience, which is interesting because he didn't come out of the chapter experience, but he knew that if we funded the right infrastructure projects and we changed the chapter experience, that we could chart a new path. And then that led, so you had Randy, then Sam, and then you had Bobby, which we've already talked about. Bobby is a quiet leader. He's unassuming, but talk about the ability to make sure those infrastructure projects were implemented and to come up with this idea of Fence Pulse saying, this is how things are going to change. And then you had a very charismatic president in Brad Howard.
Yeah.
And Brad Howard's superpower is to inspire that shared vision. And so when we talks about education, and he talks about the power of networking of the organization, he very much talks like we're talking about today. Like, this is the power of the AFA experience. And his ability to then encourage people to get involved and stay involved has led to, lining up McKay Lundgren, who is all about alignment and bringing the organization. Let's focus on improving those processes and getting our processes set. And if you think about an adage that I'm thinking that it was Randy, but it could have been kind of an amalgamation, but I'm going to give Randy credit for this, is that he has said historically AFA gets the president that they need at the time that they need it. And if you think about Randy to Sam, and Sam to Bobby, and Bobby to Brad, and Brad to McKay, these are individuals who all had different strengths. Some were good at challenging the process. Some were good at inspiring a shared vision. Others were good at encouraging the heart. But they all had those fundamental behaviors that drove the organization forward to create impact. And that's powerful. That's why people should get involved. There can only be one president each year for the organization, but you can be part of that leadership experience that makes the industry better and grows the industry.
Well, I absolutely agree, and I will absolutely echo the sentiment that the AFA has the leader they need at the time. Because when you look at where the AFA as a organization was at each one of those leaders, I mean, they moved the needle forward in their own way, but in a way that the other leaders, while they each have their superpower, couldn't quite have done it the same way. Right? It's and I look forward to it. Right, I look forward to I'm looking forward to what Ken brings to the table. Ken Throckmorton is up and coming, so I'm looking forward to what he's bringing to the table. Guys, this will be, we didn't really talk about this beforehand, but I will encourage you to please if you're not involved with AFA now, and I'm not talking about membership, I'm talking about leadership, whether it's through the chapter level is typically the easiest way to get involved. But what I found is once you start getting involved in the leadership and of the chapter, and you kind of peel back the curtain a little bit, and you see the moving parts and what the association is trying to do for the industry as a whole, that typically leads to a calling to a higher service, right? And so then you typically find yourself on maybe one of the national boards or maybe wherever your leadership skills take you. But I'll encourage you to get involved. I feel like I'm better for being a part of the Midwest chapter. Again, bias 100%, but best chapter in the country. I mean, best chapter in the world, if we're being like completely honest. But which is a pretty safe bet because, yeah.
I was just going to say, to build on that and to kind of put kind of the capstone on this whole thing. I just talked about those 5 guys because those are the guys were part of my experience. I mean, there are chapter presidents who have come along before me who were very impactful. There's tons of examples, and I will tell you, to kind of put a capstone on the chapter experience, one of my favorite episodes that you ever did was with Daniel Brown to talk about the chapter leadership experience. It's one of my favorite episodes because that to me epitomizes this idea of how do you bring people in and how do you change their life because they went to the bathroom at the wrong time, they got elected, and now they're making great things happen. And there's I don't want to. I mean, I'd love to uplift Daniel, but there are 20 examples of that happening right now where because of the vision specifically of Sam and others at the beginning part of this process of saying that the chapters were important, now that we're bearing the fruits of that now, several years later, because we've invested in the Leadership Academy, we've invested in a strong strategy that incorporates the chapters. We've built those internal processes to support those chapter experiences, including the chapter incentive program, and we have improved the chapter experience for both the suppliers who are getting more people at chapter meetings to talk to, and for the installer side of the base who are winning from that networking and mentoring experience.
Absolutely. We're about an hour and a half into this, so we probably ought to land the plane here in just a minute, just a little bit. We'll start landing the plane.
Well, I'm sure we've lost folks.
Actually, just in the numbers I see, we haven't. So I appreciate you guys sticking with us, because I think that tells you how important of a subject leadership is, right? And because and I'll use my company as an example. We haven't been great at building leaders. We've been assigning leaders, right? And usually that's because they're great at what they do, but there's not necessarily a correlation between being great at building fence and being a great leader, right? So we haven't been great at building leaders. I think we're probably not unique in that. So this is a subject I think that's important to a lot of companies I'll be the first to raise my hand and ask for help on trying to figure out a way to build leaders. Like, how do I give them the skills? How do I give them the tools? How do I share my vision? How do I encourage their heart? And I think so this conversation is a great introduction to that. Like, here's some basic ways, but I feel like this could be an ongoing conversation. We could have an ongoing kind of leadership series where it's like, okay, well, because hardly ever do you sit through one course and perfectly implement everything you've learned, right? I don't.
It's not the way we learn. It's not the way we learn as human beings. It takes repetition and it takes multiple perspectives, and we have to tie it back to things we already experienced. That's why in this conversation where we did kind of plan some of this out, where you use case studies and you use examples, and then you say, oh, yeah, I can remember when so-and-so did X, and that was a good example of leadership. And that's why keynotes are important. It's that you're going to grab one thing from that keynote, then you're going to grab one thing in Robert Whitaker's presentation on leadership, and then you're going to grab one thing from a conversation on the show floor, and then you're going to come back, and over successive years, you're going to go, geez, this place is making my business better.
Right. Well, and Robert and I talked about taking a journey. in talking about campsites and camping, but also the journey between campsites. I think a lot of times when you're on this path, you don't realize how far you've come, right? Until
Right.
you get to a point where you can look back and you can like, man, I really felt like I was walking in place there for a while and we weren't really making progress. But as I look back, we've actually come quite far from where we started, whatever time period it was, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I think it's easy to get caught up with blinders and not see progress. So, but it's worthwhile to take that look back and realize that coming to the, whether it's just FinTech, or I would encourage the educational portion of FinTech, but or the Leadership Academy or Leadership Program on Monday. It's going to those successive years and then looking back at your business and saying, wow, year on year, I didn't see great improvements, but now as I look back 5 years in the past, we've come quite a long ways. And I think you'll realize that that's where the value is.
I think so too. And sometimes using the campsite and the path analogy, sometimes you accelerate the moving down that path by, getting involved with Tony Thornton or getting involved in Robert Whitaker or getting involved with Tom Luby or others out there that are doing specific coaching, and especially those who can move you down that path quickly. But I love that campsite analogy that Robert uses. And because if you combine that campsite mentality with the path, if you are, this whole idea is that we are moving down this path together from campsite to campsite, with that ultimate goal in mind, and we're doing it under the auspices of this organization. We might be getting a little cheesy, but I think that the analogy fits.
Yeah, I think they all apply. I really do, and I think that helps people understand maybe what we're talking about. In wrapping up, let's talk specifically about FinTech. Just we've talked about it in bits and pieces, but it's right around the corner, right? As of right now, we're I think 3 weeks away ish, thereabouts. I'd have to look at a calendar. We're getting close. It's right around the corner. All the whisperings I've heard is we're already ahead in terms of pre-registrations. We're already ahead of years past. Is that still holding true?
Well, except for Nashville was a giant, in terms of our tracking of attendance, Nashville was a huge uptick because of it's Nashville and because it's accessible, drivable, accessible. But this is going to be, with the exception of Nashville, this will be the largest attended FinTech. It's overpace for all of our FinTechs over the last 12 to 15 years, 12 years.
I love it.
So the people will be there. The team has set up really good experiences. So I would encourage folks, if you want details about FinTech, to listen to Dan Wheeler's podcast and his conversation with our meeting planning, the woman who runs our meeting planning efforts, Danielle Rhodes and Robert Whitaker. And there's lots of details there. But I think if you're listening to this today and you haven't thought, I don't know if I want to go, you want to go, and you should move, because it's, for most folks, it'll be a flight. You have to fly there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, and one thing, we were talking to Jim a couple of weeks ago, largest show floor, right? So there's going to be a tremendous amount of vendors. Let me say one thing about the show floor is the park area. We talk about networking before and we talk about networking after, but you guys have implemented a park area in the center of FinTech, right next to the AFA booth, that is a great facilitator for networking during the events as well.
Yeah, it's part of that creative innovations that we're doing internally. And I'm not sure, I think it was Jim, but it was that meeting planning team who said, what if we did this differently? That challenging the process. And then inspiring a shared vision. Hey, this we've never done this before, but look what we could do in this space. So think about, we talked about leadership and we've kind of naturally assigned those folks who are in those assigned leadership roles. This is coming from the staff who said, we can challenge this process and we can do the show floor better. We can inspire a shared vision of what that middle looks like. We can model the way, which we did last year at Nashville, And then it's about that connection or that encouraging that heart. So remember at the very top of this, you said, this idea of we assign leadership, so we put people in leadership positions, but we haven't done things. Remember that these behaviors these are things people can learn to do, challenge, inspire, model. You can learn that. And that whole show floor experience came from staff and that whole idea of Jim and Danielle saying, we can make the show floor better. This is how we do it. And it was a huge hit.
Absolutely. That park area was full all 3 days, most of the show, the duration of the show. Great place. So if you guys are attending, one, get there early, stay late, but also during the show, take a minute to hang out in the park and just, again, that's another opportunity to network with people you may never have met before, but that could change your business's life. It's good stuff. So a couple things we haven't talked about in this show that we've talked about before. Pickets and Peaks is the opening party Tuesday evening. So make plans to attend that if nothing else. If you can't get in Monday, come in Tuesday to be there for Pickets and Peaks. Wednesday, so education starts on Tuesday, is that right?
That's correct.
And then rolls into Wednesday, I believe. And then keynote Wednesday at 11. And then directly after that, roll into opening ceremony, which is always a good time. Show floor Wednesday afternoon, all day Thursday, Friday morning. And then everyone gets released into Salt Lake City to enjoy the town, because I think there's a lot of people planning on doing a lot of fun things afterwards.
I think so. That's what I'm hearing.
So, all right. Well, Michael, thank you again for making yourself available on a Saturday morning. Guys, I think you'll agree with me that this was a great conversation. Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot. What do you think about making this a regular segment where we talk about leadership? Because I think that's one of the things that you're known for is, again, inspiring others to learn more about leadership. How do you feel about making this a regular segment?
I'm happy to do it. This is... sorry, I pulled you longer than you like to go.
No, that's okay.
I would do it.
Right.
I would do it in a heartbeat, Joe. Just let me know how I can help.
I love it. Guys, thank you so much for watching along. Apologize for not getting to the comment section. We had so much to get through, and we were having such a great conversation. Just know that I see you. Thank you guys so much for joining us and participating in the conversation through the comment section. If you guys are listening to the podcast, congratulations on making it to the end. If you'd like to participate in the live video, check us out on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, search Joe Everest on any one of those, and you'll come up with the show. We go live or recorded live, Saturdays at 10 a.m. Central. Again, thank you so much, Michael, for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Of course. Guys, for now, Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences, Michael?
Make good neighbors.
Bingo. Nailed it. All right. Have a great day, guys.